Breaking news, Raider Nation. After the Silver and Black battled the 49ers in preseason action, it's time for a brand new 53-man roster projection. Every snap in these preseason games tells us something: who's rising, who's slipping, and yes, which surprise names could be left out when the final cuts are made. Now, before we dive into all of that, make sure you hit that subscribe button, give this video a like, and don't forget to tap the bell icon. That way you won't miss the latest Raiders updates as soon as they drop. Alright, let's get into it. We're starting at quarterback, and while this room feels stable on the surface, there's always a bit of drama beneath. The Raiders have three right now: Geno Smith, Aiden O'Connell, and Cam Miller. I believe all three stay, even though rumors about AOC's future keep swirling. Pete Carroll even dropped a few pointed comments about Aiden slowing the tempo at times, but I think his spot is still safe. Geno brings the veteran presence, Cam shows promise as a developmental guy, and together that makes this room feel locked in. But here's where things start to get spicy: the running back position. Jeanty turned heads with his physical style: 7 carries, 33 yards, a touchdown, and one highlight reel stiff arm that screamed, "Give me the ball more." If it were my call, he'd be the featured back moving forward. Still, the staff clearly loves Zamir White, and that's where the roster math gets tricky. Because I'll tell you this much: when we get deeper into this projection, there's a shocking potential cut that almost nobody is talking about. And it could flip the backfield depth chart upside down. Now, I've got to give credit where it's due. Zamir "Zeus" White deserves recognition. He's clearly slimmed down, looks quicker on his feet, and most importantly, he's protecting the football. That effort is paying off, and it's a big reason why both he and Mostert look like locks to make this roster. But the real drama at running back comes further down the depth chart. Chris Collier, Sincere McCormick, and Dylan Lobb are all fighting tooth and nail for a spot. After watching closely, I lean toward Collier. Here's why: not only has he shown more juice as a runner, but his work on special teams has stood out compared to McCormick and Lobb. When you already have Jeanty as a bruiser and Mostert with plenty of experience, keeping a versatile contributor like Collier just makes sense. My call: the Raiders keep 4 running backs: Jeanty, Zeus White, Mostert, and Collier. Now let's shift to the wide receiver room, and this is where things get very interesting. Jakobi Meyers remains WR1, no question, but behind him we've got Trey Tucker and Dante Thornton Jr. holding strong. Real battle is among the names fighting for those final spots: Alex Bachman, Tommy Mellott, Jack Beck, Philip Dorsett, and Colin Johnson. Each brings something different to the table, and whether the Raiders keep 5 or 6 wideouts could decide their fate. Here's the twist: Tommy Mellott isn't a guaranteed lock. Neither is rookie linebacker Cody Lindenberg, and that's where this roster projection gets tricky. Do the Raiders gamble on raw upside, or do they play it safe with proven depth? Personally, I believe they'll keep faith in their rookies. Myers may have raised some quiet concerns behind the scenes, but the front office and coaching staff are clearly invested in building for the future. At the end of the day, I'll say it: every rookie from the 2025 draft finds their way onto this 53-man roster. Some may not be ready to contribute right away, but the Raiders are betting big on long-term development. When you listen to Pete Carroll's comments about this offseason, one thing stands out: he's got real confidence in his staff and the direction of this regime. That belief carries over to roster decisions, which is why I'm keeping Tommy Mellott as my 13th man. Alongside him, Alex Bachman earns a spot too. Right now, Bachman is simply more polished than Mellott, and with quiet concerns still lingering around Jakobi Meyers, the team may want Bachman's reliability in case his number gets called sooner than expected. Bottom line, the Raiders carry 6 wide receivers on this roster. Now let's slide over to the tight end room, where things get interesting. Watching Brock Bowers was electric. He's already flashing superstar traits. Michael Mayer is right there as well, a high-level complement who can do it all. But the depth behind them, that's where questions start piling up. Ian Thomas has struggled in camp. Another drop against the 49ers didn't help his case. Albert Okwuegbunam at least showed he can block, while Carter Runnan had himself a strong showing and could have had an even bigger night if Aiden O'Connell hadn't missed him on a wide-open touchdown. Then you've got Quadier Ishmael and Justin Shorter, hybrid types fighting to carve out a role. For now, I still keep Ian Thomas on the 53. He brings blocking ability and has flashed red zone skills in the past. But let's be clear, he's on thin ice. When I stack this roster top to bottom, Thomas sits in that bottom handful of players who could be one mistake away from losing their job. In the final preseason game, I expect him to play heavy snaps while stars like Bowers and May rest. And honestly, he needs to prove himself. Now let's move into the trenches, the offensive line. Left tackle, left guard, guard, right tackle. This starting unit feels locked in. But the depth chart is less settled. Draft picks like Caleb Rogers and Charles Graham are still projects. And the biggest question mark remains veteran Alex Kappa, who hasn't been healthy. Until that situation clears up, this unit has more uncertainty than it looks at first glance. When it comes to the offensive line, I've made a tough call. Thayer Munford doesn't make this roster. I hold this Raiders O-line to a higher standard, and after rewatching the 49ers game, I just can't justify keeping him. Some outlets tried grading him out decently, but from my eyes, the tape told a different story. And that's why you can't always lean on numbers alone. Sometimes you've just got to trust what you see on the field. I'm sticking with 8 offensive linemen, though I'll be honest, I don't feel great about that number. Depth is a real concern here. Sure, Dalton Wagner flashed moments where you could make a case for him. And then there's Loki Tossi, the International Pathway Program player, who really impressed in the run game. He may not crack the 53 yet, but I think he's destined for the practice squad and could be called up if needed. Even with those options, the reality is that guys like Grant and Rogers just haven't shown enough to solidify depth. And as much as I'd like to find a 9th lineman I trust, right now, I can't justify forcing someone into that spot. For me, Munford's time is up, and the group rolls forward with 8. Now, as we shift from offense to defense, here's where things get a lot more intriguing. Last week, I went back through the film, and while the offense has been running a pretty vanilla scheme, the defense leaves me with more questions than answers. And that's exactly why my roster projection leans heavier on defensive players this year. Now let's flip it over to the defensive side of the football, where things are about to get very real. At defensive end, Max Crosby played with the kind of intensity you usually see in a regular season game, relentless, disruptive, and setting the tone for everyone else. Charles Snowden showed flashes that will keep him in the mix, and as for Tyree Wilson, it's time to be honest, he looks more natural inside. Watching him work at defensive tackle, he was an absolute force, flat-out dominant. The concern here lies with Malcolm Koonce. He's struggled both in the mock game and the preseason. Even though his new contract keeps his roster spot secure, the performances haven't matched the price tag. He'll make the team, no question, but right now he hasn't lived up to expectations. So here's how I see it. The Raiders keep 5 edge rushers. That includes Tonka Hemingway, who's listed as a defensive end, but has been used in multiple spots. Sometimes he's lined up inside, sometimes outside. It almost feels like the coaching staff is molding him into a hybrid piece alongside Tyree. That versatility keeps him valuable. Now let's move inside to defensive tackle, where things take a surprising turn. For weeks, I've penciled in Nesta Jade Silvera and Matthew Butler, but this time I'm making a change. One big name drops out. Neil Farrell Jr. Simply put, availability matters. He's been banged up, stuck in a walking boot, and when you're that size and can't get reps in, it's hard to imagine him ready for football shape anytime soon. Meanwhile, Thomas Booker has been rising quickly. Along with Adam Butler, those two have become the anchors inside, behind Tyree Wilson's snaps at tackle. John Jenkins showed improvement, and if there's one guy I regret not giving enough love to in earlier evaluations, it's JJ. Vegas. He played with real fire, and his stock is climbing at the right time. Bottom line, the Raiders' defensive front is getting reshaped right before our eyes. Some veterans are slipping, while young and versatile players are forcing their way onto the radar. When I went back and studied the film, one player stood out more than I first realized, JJ. Vegas. On the rewatch, his impact jumped off the screen. He should have been highlighted as a winner earlier, and I'll own that. Alongside him, Zach Carter added depth inside, reminding us that while the Raiders may not have a single dominant force like Christian Wilkins, they can build strength through constant rotation. Fresh legs in the trenches, wave after wave. This is exactly what Patrick Graham wants to replicate, much like Philadelphia's formula. Now, let's talk about the linebackers. This group comes with promise, but also plenty of question marks. The core is clear: Jermaine Pratt, Alandon Roberts, Devin White, and Jamal Adams. Those four are locked in. But beyond them, it gets cloudy. Amari Gaynor continues to puzzle me. Why isn't he getting more snaps? He looks like the odd man out. Michael Barrett flashed in the 49ers game, but it likely won't be enough to keep him on the 53. Matt Jones has been shaky in coverage, drawing comparisons to Luke Masterson, which isn't exactly a compliment. Jalen Smith is seeing reps, but consistency remains an issue. And then there's Tommy Eichenberg. Puff gave him high marks, but I'm not entirely convinced. He made a few solid plays, yes, but also missed some key reads. Finally, we have Cody Lindenberg, a 7th-round pick who still feels like a coin flip. Do they keep him for development, or let him go and risk losing him? For now, I see the Raiders sticking with their top 4, while the remaining names battle it out in the final preseason game. This linebacker room has talent, but there's still no clear answer to the biggest question: who can truly hold up in coverage when the real games begin? When it comes to the linebackers, I'm standing firm. My 53-man projection keeps 6 players, and the decision really comes down to potential. The Raiders clearly believe in Tommy Eichenberg and Cody Lindenberg. Both rookies have raw spots in their game. You saw Eichenberg get bulldozed on that Jeff Wilson touchdown, even though he diagnosed the play correctly. Lindenberg, too, shows flashes of strong instincts, but still needs refinement. Here's where it gets interesting. All 4 veteran linebackers, Roberts, White, Pratt, and Adams, are on 1-year deals. That means next year could open the door for Eichenberg and Lindenberg to step forward. This season might just be about learning, developing, and getting ready for a bigger role when the time comes. Now let's pivot to the cornerback room, because I know that's where a lot of people's eyes are. Quite frankly, it's one of the biggest question marks on this roster. Eric Stokes and Darian Porter both struggled against San Francisco, with Porter looking especially shaky. And for a defense that already raises concerns in coverage, that's not the kind of performance you want to see. The depth chart tells its own story. Sam Webb isn't going to make it. Neither is John Humphrey. JT Woods, who was seeing time with the starters not long ago, has fallen out of the picture as well. Even Greedy Vance, who fought hard, just misses the cut here. That leaves 5 corners I'm willing to keep, but even then, there are question marks. The staff likes Darnay Holmes, but the fact he's playing deep into preseason games makes you wonder where he truly stands. Meanwhile, Kyer Blue Kelly has been starting over Porter, and if the season kicked off tomorrow against New England, I honestly think Kelly and Stokes could be your top 2 outside corners. And let's not forget Cameron Richardson. He's an incredible athlete, but he needs to clean up his technique and take the next step forward. Right now, these 5 corners make the list, but I'll be real with you, part of me feels like the Raiders have to add help from the outside. Leaving 1 spot open for a veteran addition almost makes more sense than rolling into week 1 with what they've got. Now let's shift to the safety room, which has quietly become one of the more fascinating groups on this roster. Last time I broke it down, I didn't have Terrell Edmunds making the cut. But after rewatching and really sitting with it, he's in. He brings stability, and the coaches like what they've seen. Meanwhile, Jeremy Chin continues to shine. Against San Francisco, he looked like the best defender on the field, not named Max Crosby, flying around, delivering hits, and pulling down a gorgeous interception. If he keeps that up, he's not just a lock for the roster, he could become the heart of this secondary. Behind them, Isaiah Pola-Mao holds on to the 3rd spot. He isn't flashy, but he's reliable, and in a defense that's still figuring out its corner situation, having someone steady at safety matters. That leaves the final spot, which comes down to health and opportunity. Chris Smith stepped up with a strong showing against the 49ers after an uneven game in Seattle. He may not have been the plan early on, but he's playing his way into the conversation. If Thomas Harper were healthy, the story might be different. But availability matters, and right now Smith is proving he deserves a place. As for Lonnie Johnson Jr., this one's tricky. He's talented enough to make the roster, but injury changes everything. Most likely, he starts the year on IR. That means he won't count toward the initial 53, but the Raiders are clearly holding a spot for him down the line. So my projection here is 4 safeties on the 53-man roster, with Johnson stashed on IR until he's ready. It's not a perfect group, but with Chin leading the way and Edmonds adding veteran presence, this safety room is starting to look like one of the quieter strengths of the defense. I've said it since the very beginning of the offseason. This secondary still needs help. You can dress it up however you want, but if the Raiders are serious about competing, they've got to add a proven name on the back end. I'm talking about a Justin Simmons, a Stephen Gilmore, maybe even a Rasul Douglas. Doesn't matter who the name is, what matters is that the Raiders take a real swing. Because right now, if you tell me you're completely comfortable with this group, I just can't buy it. There are too many question marks, and at some point, the front office has to address it. Now let's close things out with special teams. No surprises here. Daniel Carlson and A.J. Cole remain 2 of the best at what they do. Carlson went a perfect 4 for 4 this past week, reminding everyone why he's as reliable as they come. Jacob Bobenmoyer locks in the long snapper spot, keeping the core unit intact. Where things get interesting is with the depth players who contribute on special teams. I kept Chris Collier at running back, largely because of the versatility he brings in the third phase. That decision came at the expense of Sincere McCormick and Lobe, but when you factor in that I also kept Alex Bachman at wide receiver, who adds immediate value on special teams, the balance made more sense. Of course, that meant leaving out some tough names. Thomas Harper, Greedy Vance, Luke Masterson, even Amari Gaynor, all guys with talent, all guys who had a case. But in the end, you can only carry 53. Cuts are never easy, and this year they felt especially tight. So that's how my final projection shakes out. The stars are obvious, the role players come down to fit, and the secondary. Still the biggest question hanging over this team.